We've all seen people give their differing opinions on things in Pokemon, but what I wanted to do instead was talk about the Pokemon opinions that have changed over time, whether it be my own opinions, or from Pokemon fans in general. After 20 years of playing Pokemon, there are bound to be things that people have changed their mind on. But before we begin, this video is sponsored by Atlas VPN, one of the fastest VPNs in the world. Is there a show or film that you're dying to see, but isn't available in your country? Atlas makes it incredibly simple to switch to whichever region you want at the click of a button by changing your IP location. All you need to do is select which country you want, as well as the specific area, and you'll be good to go. Hackers are always trying to find out your private info, but using a VPN prevents your data from being stolen, and Atlas ensures that your data is always safe. Whether it be home internet, or even public Wi-Fi, Atlas has you covered. So, if you want to grab the best VPN deal on the market right now, for literally less than $2 a month, plus 3 months extra, with a 30-day money-back guarantee, sign up using the link on screen, or in the description. Why not give Atlas VPN a go? Thank you so much to Atlas for sponsoring this video. Now, onto some Pokemon opinions that have changed over the years. Starting off with what gave me the idea for this video, my absolute favourite evolution for the longest time has been Leafeon. Pretty unpopular opinion, but I did explain why in my evolution video. However, even though Leafeon is still one of my favourite evolutions, my current favourite is now Espeon. Not really sure why. However, when I streamed a site where I picked my favourite Pokemon of each type, Espeon was the evolution that I picked. And when I think of which evolution I'd most want to have, Espeon is the first one that comes to mind. Speaking of unpopular opinions that are now not so unpopular, I, like a lot of people, wasn't the biggest fan of Gen 5. In fact, Black and White 2 was the only Pokemon game in a while that I just stopped playing after the Pokemon League. However, after revisiting the Black and White sequels, I, like a lot of people, found Gen 5 to have some of the strongest Pokemon games. Black and White 2 has a ton of content, especially post-game, and even though I do think a lot of it is quantity over quality, it's easy to see why a lot of people see the Gen 5 games as some of the best that Pokemon's given us. I think we've all had Pokemon that we hated at first, but eventually grew to love, whether it be using them on a team, or in this case, seeing leaked images of the Pokemon, hating it, and then changing our mind when we found out how cool it was. With the perfect example being Greninja. I, like a lot of people, did not like the look of this, especially compared to a fake leak that went around. It looked so different than what we expected the evolution to be, but when we finally saw Greninja in action, it's now, unsurprisingly, one of the most popular, if not the most popular Pokemon of all time. This was also the case for a couple of the Hisuian starters. I really did not like how Decidueye and Typhlosion looked, so much so that I considered picking Oshawott as my starter at one point. But again, instead of just one image, I saw them in action, and now love both of them, even more than Samurott. Some other Pokemon my opinion has completely flipped on after using in battle is Ludicolo and Miltank. Both of these Pokemon I really didn't care for at first, but Ludicolo was one of my most used Pokemon back when I played VGC, and Miltank because it's the best metronome Pokemon of all time. I think we can all agree with that. On the topic of Pokemon we used to hate, I want to give a shout out to inanimate object Pokemon. Not all of them, but some have definitely grown on us a lot. I think a lot of people saw Klefki for the first time and muttered the famous line, "Wow, Pokemon's really running out of ideas." But now I think it's fair to say that Klefki is one of the most popular Gen 6 Pokemon. Another one that I personally hated for the longest time is Crabominable. So much so that at one point it was my absolute least favourite Pokemon. And now, still not a fan of it. But it's not my least favourite anymore, because Greedent exists. And I think most of you know how I feel about Greedent. For my best battle themes video, I picked the Alola Champion theme from Sun and Moon as number 1. And that was a long time ago, literally right after Sun and Moon came out. So this was definitely recency biased, because now I think I prefer most other themes that were on the list. I mean, I really put the Alola theme above Cynthia's theme. Yeah, this list would definitely be different if I made it today. Since as long as I can remember, Mewtwo has been my favourite legendary Pokemon, Dialga has been my favourite box legend, Garchomp has been one of my favourite dragon types, and starting from last year, none of that is true, because Koraidon now exists. It's the best legendary, the best box legend, the best dragon type. I could go on. Ever since Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, the trend of remakes has been pretty popular among Pokemon fans over the years. The Hoenn remakes confirmed was one of the biggest Pokemon memes back in the day, and of course the same thing happened for Sinnoh after Oras came out. And when we finally got our beloved Sinnoh remakes, yeah, I think it's safe to say that not as many of us want remakes anymore. I mean, they'd be nice for sure, but we're definitely nowhere near as excited. 27th of February, aka Pokemon Day, is a very exciting time for Pokemon fans. We get a special Pokemon Presents, showing off what Pokemon has in store for the year. And the thing Pokemon fans most often want to see is what the next Pokemon game is going to be. Or that was what we wanted to see the most. Now I think a lot of people, including myself, would love it if instead Pokemon announced no main series game this year, or next year, or the year after even, and for them to just take an entire generational break, spending a few years on a single main series Pokemon game that isn't unfinished and is to the quality of other Nintendo games today. Could you imagine an open world Pokemon game that had like 5 years of development time? I think every Pokemon fan would be totally fine waiting for that. You're either one of two Pokemon players. You give your team nicknames, or you don't bother with nicknames. I used to be someone who never used nicknames. However, starting Gen 7, I decided to go ahead with nicknames for the first time. And since then, I can't see myself going back. I argue that giving nicknames makes making a team so much more fun. Trying to come up with cool names for your Pokemon, it really does help you bond with them a lot more. So if you've never bothered with nicknames, I'd say give it a try. Remember when Dexit was announced, and people were very, very salty about it? So much so to the point that there were people that were going to boycott the Pokemon games. Yeah, I guess they changed their mind. One of the biggest opinions you can give is which Pokemon you like the most. In 2020, a Pokemon of the Year poll was taken, where the highest ranking Pokemon were not very surprising at all. However, a year later, the poll was taken again, and the Pokemon that won the poll were almost completely different, with the top 3 being Dedenne, Chinchino, and Sableye. I don't think anyone would have guessed that. Again, these top 10s couldn't be more different. When the Sword and Shield box legends were revealed, it's pretty safe to say that Zacian was much more popular. A cool looking wolf holding a sword in its mouth. Yeah, people are gonna really like this Pokemon. And that was the case. Almost too much, especially in terms of competitive, to the point where pretty much no one wants to go against it. Even in Unite, where people have been begging for it to be nerfed and still on a rampage. All this to the point that people most likely really hate this Pokemon. Proof that it doesn't matter how cool your Pokemon looks, if it makes you miserable, people are going to get sick of it. You want to know how to change a Pokemon fan's opinions the quickest? Show them a super cute starter trio, have them pick a starter they like the most, ask them if they want to change their choice, only for them to say no, and that they're whichever team that they picked, and they're not going to change, and then show them the evolutions, and watch as they go crawling back to a different starter. Happens every generation. Shiny Pokemon felt so special back in the early generations, with a lot of people taking weeks if not months to find just one. Nowadays, shinies are found by the same people pretty much every day, and really doesn't feel nearly as special as they once were. So it's safe to say that people's thoughts on how shiny should be handled definitely differ over the years. They're either way too easy to get, or in some cases, maybe a bit too rare. An opinion I've always stuck to, and will always stick to, is that Deoxys is orange. Now I totally understand people who think Deoxys is red, as it really did look red back in the Deoxys movie, and that is of course a lot of people's first experience with Deoxys. But outside of the anime, you have to admit, this is 100% orange. If this hasn't changed your opinion on Deoxys, and you still somehow think it's red, then I guess you also think Charizard is red. Come on, they're the same colour. We all at one point made fun of Ash for being just a worse version of red, or just kind of sucking in general. Now, that really isn't the case, and I think a lot of people's opinions on Ash have changed drastically. And you know what? Good on Ash. He's come a long way. For the longest time, Gen 2 was seen as the absolute best generation by most people. I mean, having 2 whole regions in your Pokemon game, that's a pretty damn good argument. this isn't really the case as much anymore, with people opting to say other generations are the best. Hell, there are even people who go to the point that saying Gen 2 is overrated. Not even overrated, some people even say it's one of the weaker gens. But whatever your opinion on the generations is, I'm glad that we can at least all agree on one thing. Gen 4 is still the best. And finally, an opinion of my own that I'm sure some of you would agree with. When I first played Pokemon Battle Revolution back in 2007, I thought the idea of Pokemon going from sprites to models was such a big jump, and I was so excited that in Gen 6 we would be moving forward, and instead of sprites, for the foreseeable future, we would be having models instead. Now, I kind of want them to go back to sprites, not gonna lie. I think that would be really cool. And those are some Pokemon opinions that have changed over the years. Do you agree with these? Or are there other Pokemon opinions that you've changed your mind on? Either way, please do leave a like if you enjoyed, as it does help the video out a lot. Subscribe for more Pokemon videos in the future, and until next time, thank you so much for watching.